Look at this. I got pine trees growing in my wood chip slash debris pile here. That's going to be in the middle of the Grand Walkway. Well, that's not good. I got to do something about that. Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's another fine sunny day here in eastern North Carolina. Temperature's going to be about 50 today, which isn't too bad. Although I hear next week we're supposed to get in like polar temperatures, down to freezing during the daytime. I think it's some sort of polar vortex, weathery, venty thing. I think most of the country is going to be quite cold. Either way, today, not much going on. I really wanted to get those trees pulled because if I didn't pull them now, they'd only get obviously larger and the roots would get deeper in. And I don't want pine trees in the Grand Walkway. That mess that I was just climbing around in, I'm going to try to get that gone this winter. I know I said that last winter, but this winter I'm going to try. I still have to build at least 2 new birdies beds. That's going to go in the vegetable garden there, and I want to get the wood chips and twigs and other debris that's there into the bottom of those birdies beds to help fill them up. Again, if you're doing any sort of tall raised bed like that, you should probably just fill as much as you can. I would say easily 3/4, if not like 90% of the bed itself with logs, branches, grass clippings, wood chips, things like that, so that you're not wasting all that space on like a raised bed mix. Right now, let's talk about what's going on here on the potting bench before we get into the greenhouse, because really stuff that's happening in the greenhouse it's getting kind of exciting in there. Again, I've never had a greenhouse before. I'm not one that I could grow in year-round, proper greenhouse, as it were. I did have one in New York. When I lived in New York, my brother-in-law and father-in-law built it for me, and my wife. Actually, they built it for my wife, but she wasn't using it that much. I wanted to get in gardening. I wanted to be using it just a little bit, especially in the springtime to start stuff off. But New York, it just gets so much colder there. Here, growing zone 8A, it doesn't get as cold during the winter times, and the glass really amplifies the heat on the inside. So when the sun comes up, it really starts getting warm in there. Plus, again, if you were following along with my other previous videos, I'm doing some passive heating inside with water-filled containers that are spray painted black to absorb the heat during the daytime. And then at nighttime, when temperatures are cooling, they'll basically release that heat and hopefully just keep the inside just above freezing and a little milder. I think next week it'll really be put to the test, but there's not much I can do about it at the moment. What do we have going on here on the potting bench? I have quite a few pots with bulbs in them. Some of them are left over from last year, and what I'll probably wind up doing is I'll wind up doing a little bit of weeding, and then I may top off with a little fresh compost in the springtime, or I'll just maybe do something like the earthworm castings, do some of that on top just as a natural fertilizer, and this way then hopefully get a quite a nice show come the spring. Right here I have, what do I have, five Japanese boxwoods, or Japanese holly. They look like boxwoods, but they were sitting in little cups in the veg garden forever, and I just needed to get them up potted. So here they are, and they're pretty small still. But hopefully they put on some growth next year, and then these grow these from my experience, because these are, I believe, these are what's in the front of the house, and they put on at least a foot of growth a year, which is pretty impressive. So I'm hoping that I can plant these out into the garden next year. Right now I'm thinking the flower garden, maybe start a new hedgerow line someplace. I don't know. Some of these plants are still up in the air, but recently, when I was redoing the front of the beds, or redoing the front of one of the beds in the front of the house there, I took up 3 Russian Rhapsody daylilies. Now, the daylilies here are just, it's like crack to a deer. They just love to eat the leaves of the daylilies. I would say it's daylilies, roses, and hostas. 3 plants I love, 3 plants the deer love to eat. So I'm probably going to move my daylilies in time into either the rose garden and or here in the veg garden, and I'll talk about that more when I start planting out the in-ground beds next year in the veg garden. But right now, like I said, I started off with 3, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 new daylilies. So if you're not familiar with daylilies, it's fairly easy plant to grow. The biggest pest I have here is deer. And when the plant gets bigger, it just starts to put out more rhizomes, I believe they're called. I think, if I'm mistaken, please leave a comment below. But I believe they put out like a rhizome. They're not far spreading, they just spread a little bit, but basically the clump just starts getting larger and larger. And what you could do is you can divide them, just pull it apart. And from 3, I got 18. Now in another year or 2, I may get double that. 3 years, double that, etc., etc. So it's, again, fairly easy to grow, beautiful flowers, and as long as you can keep the deer off of them, pretty good. So that's pretty exciting. If you haven't noticed, there's a snapdragon here, and I thought the frosts were going to have to kill this off 3 times already. We've gotten a couple of hard frosts and a bunch of little light frosts. And as you can see, we're still got a flower going on here. So we still got a flower, and it's looking quite nice. And a few of the others are also starting to flower, which is, again, unusual, but growing zone 8A. The plan with the snapdragons is I was going to wait for the hard frost to sort of knock them back, and then I was going to cut these back and put them in the greenhouse, which I'll probably still do. But again, they can probably stay out for at least another week. Now again, next week we're supposed to get those freezing cold temperatures, so at that, again, before next week, I'll probably want, again, cutting them back a little bit and putting them into the greenhouse just for the winter. In the springtime, I'll plant them out into the flower garden once everything starts to warm up. Other than that, I have cuttings in the back here. They aren't doing much, but let's go take a look at what's going to happen in the greenhouse. So if you've been following along, I obviously have a greenhouse. It was built earlier this year, but I wasn't really able to take full advantage of it in the early spring because by the time this got built, it was sort of late spring. And one of the reasons I got it was to try to keep things in here during the wintertime that aren't as frost hardy as the, like my lemon trees. I left them outside last year, and they got beaten back to the point I thought they were dead. This year, I'll be bringing them into the greenhouse so that they can hopefully, obviously withstand whatever cold and temperatures that we do get. And obviously, if we do get a freezing rain, they won't get hit with that freezing rain being inside the greenhouse. Same thing with my orange tree. It didn't get quite knocked back as hard as the lemon trees, but again, I don't want to really take that risk. And if I can put it under shelter here, all the better. Let me show you what I've been putting on the benches and what's happening. Okay, so as you can see, the benches are filling up, and some of this stuff is just cuttings, and other stuff is stuff that I'm going to try to grow in here during the wintertime. So let me start off with first the one thing that I found absolutely amazing. I have 4 of these cuttings. This is, hopefully the camera's focusing here, this is Earth Angel. I believe it's a heritage rose. And this thing is putting on crazy growth. This is about a month old now. It was just a single cutting, no buds. It has put on buds. It has put on leaves. It is just growing like nobody's business. And all 4 of the cuttings that I took are doing that. I'm probably going to have to pot them up. I don't know. I don't know when I should pot them up. Up-pot them, I should say. Do I just leave them in these little cups, until the springtime? Maybe, and then plant them or pot them in the springtime. I'm not sure. In the back corner here, I have red swamp milkweed. Not much to look at, but another plant that I'm actually amazed by is this larkspur. Now, this larkspur, if you remember, it was in a little pot, and I put it into the bigger pot, and it looked like it died back, and I was like, oh no, it's dead. But then I saw these buds and I was like, well, let's give it a chance. Let's give it, see what happens. Sure enough, it's put on all this new growth. And I'll plant this out in the flower garden come the springtime as well. Up top, I have these little pots of lupines. Now, they're not going to do much right now. It's still, it's still a little too cold for them, but they are surviving. They are putting on little growth. They'll be fine in these pots. I'm pretty confident throughout the winter. And then again, come the springtime, I can then plant them right out in the garden. I have a few other cuttings along the top here. One of them, which I'm a little surprised about here, this is a oak leaf hydrangea. And it doesn't look like much right now. It might be because of the cold. I've never taken hydrangea cuttings before, but maybe if you can see, I don't know if the camera will allow that, in the center there, it looks like there's a little new growth. Again, I'm hopeful that this survives until the springtime. Hopefully it'll start growing a lot more. I'll up-pot it, and who knows, I may wind up planting it out next year. Probably along the driveway side, because those beds are going to be expanding, and I'll be putting some new plants in there and doing some other stuff this winter. Well, not putting the plants in during the winter. Well, yeah, actually, hit the subscribe button. Click that bell icon to be notified when I do post up a new video. And you can follow along and see what antics I get up to. Because, again, I'm growing Zone 8A, so I can pretty much garden to one extent or another throughout the winter season. Or do some sort of project involving the garden. I have a couple of rosemary plants here that I started from seedling last year. They didn't, I kind of forgot about them, and I left them in small pots. I just recently repotted them, so they're in slightly bigger pots. They're looking good and healthy. And again, come the springtime, I'll probably plant them out. I'm not sure where I'll plant these, but next to them I have a couple of carnations, which again, I sort of kind of ignored, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know if they were going to survive. Here's one of the carnations. Oh, and yeah, so I'm hoping that, again, this makes it through the winter in here. And then again, come the springtime, I can plant them out pretty early, and I don't have to wait for the little seedling to grow up. I'll probably be starting more carnations from seed this spring, but again, I'll have these to get a jump start on. I have a couple of English lavender, which again, I started and I kind of ignored, and it sort of fell off the radar, and then I got I replanted them, but smell nice, and they're still growing, which is great. They'll definitely, no matter how cold it gets in here and during the winter time, they'll be fine because they're fairly cold hardy plants. Now recently, when I did the Earth Angel cuttings, I took a couple of cuttings of my Mr. Lincoln rosebush. Let me show you those. Now this one is, as you can see, it just looks like a stick in the dirt, and it's really hard to tell, but it looks like it has at least one bud on there. I'm not giving up on them. I will let them continue to do their thing, but I also decided to sort of hedge my bets, and I took 3 more cuttings. Now these cuttings were from newer growth that just came on this fall, and they were all sorts of new buds. I don't know how this is going to work out, so this is sort of an experiment. Ooh, this is nice and warm. So here we have, let's see if I can turn around this way. Hopefully you can see that. There you go. See that right there? So it has a new bud on it. Now this is not new since I've put it in here. This came with the cutting. So I took the cutting and it had a growth bud on it, and I basically left it. I didn't strip it off. Now I'm not an expert at growing roses by far. I have no clue what I'm doing. So if you have an idea of whether I should have taken the bud off or not, please leave those comments below. But I took those cuttings and again, just potted them up, and we'll see what happens. If those buds, if those buds start to grow, if those, Mr. Lincoln stems, they want to put out roots, and all the better. If they don't, it was an experiment. I gave it a try. Speaking of experiments and giving things a try, let me show you what's cooking here. So nothing showing yet with my, hold on, I just noticed something. But it looks like I have some lettuce coming up in this bag, which is pretty cool. Ooh, there's a few more over here. Where are you? There you are. So there's a few more coming up. And then I noticed just this morning as I was opening up the greenhouse here, I have some radish. I just see the 2 for now. And over here, it's supposed to be parsley, but I don't see any parsley growing quite yet. And down here at the back end over here, I have the garlic. This is Transylvania softneck, growing in a pot. It's sort of an experiment. And so they say the larger the clove you plant, the larger bulb of garlic you get. In this pot, there are a couple of little, really tiny sort of cloves. Again, if maybe you're a more professional gardener than I am, or you have a lot more experience, you would maybe taken those cloves and just used them for cooking or thrown them out or whatever. I decided to put them in a pot as an experiment and see if I can get these to grow faster than what grows outside here in the greenhouse. So essentially, the theory is that when it's freezing cold outside and the growth has either killed, the cold has either killed off the tops or it's slowed the growth of the garlic, that in here where it's warmer, the garlic will grow faster. It's an experiment. I'm just seeing what happens. I mean, theoretically, those outside I would be harvesting, I want to say around the 4th of July, thereabouts. This I want to see if I can harvest it sooner, perhaps June. I don't know. Again, want to see the difference, just a little experiment to have. Again, I have Wandering Jew, and I don't know the name of this pink flower back here that my wife has. But it's lovely, and again, because it hasn't gotten to freezing inside the greenhouse yet, and hopefully I can keep it from doing that, these, what would normally be, I guess, an annual, is doing fine. And in the back corner, I have my peppers, and the peppers really haven't put on much growth, if anything at all, but they haven't died back either. So again, this is an experiment that if I have these little pepper seedlings back here, and I'm trying to grow them. And if I have these pepper seedlings back here, hopefully they don't die off because of the cold. Hopefully they'll stay warm. It'll stay warm enough here in the greenhouse. And then come the springtime, I can put them outside. And theoretically, since they already have a big head start, they'll take off, grow, and I'll get some, hopefully, peppers, who knows, late spring. Whereas I think normally you may have to wait longer for that to get peppers. I've never really grown peppers before. This year is going to be my first year growing peppers. Obviously, there's that pot started there, but I'll also be starting peppers from seed. I have a couple of nieces and nephews, and my wife, of course, who enjoys peppers. I'm not a pepper guy, so they'll obviously be the beneficiaries of whatever I grow. But it's a plant I've never grown before, and I think I'd like to give it a try. And on this side of the potting, on this side of the greenhouse, there's not much going on. But I do have some elephant ears that I took up from the ground. And they're really just in the pots, sort of in that dormant state. And then hopefully in the springtime I can turn around and plant them out. And that's it. That's what's going on in the greenhouse. I do have stuff growing and thriving, which is crazy to me. There's, again, stuff growing. Now, again, we are next week supposed to get those really cold temperatures. I don't know how anything's going to fare. I don't know how well the greenhouse is going to hold up with the internal temperatures. But if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, click that bell icon to be notified when I do post a new video. And then probably after Christmas, I'll do another update on what's going on here in the greenhouse and how things are progressing. I don't expect to see much, but maybe it got so cold in the greenhouse overnight during those really cold temperature nights that it winds up killing off stuff. I don't know. Again, it's all new to me. That's going to about do it for today. Please check out all the links in the description below. I have links to the music I use. I have links to merch like this cool sweatshirt here. And all my, of course, social media stuff. So I'm going to catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.